The Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago hosted the 26th ICT Open Forum, Renewable Energy, Powering Future Telecommunications and Broadcasting Services. This forum initiated the discussion on the future use of renewable energy technologies in the domestic telecommunications and broadcasting sectors and the potential economic and environmental cost saving to the telecommunications and broadcasting sectors in Trinidad and Tobago from the use of such technologies. The globe has traditionally used fossil as energies since the Industrial Revolution. Examples of this include coal, natural gas, crude oil. However, the side effect of using them has become problematic for several reasons. 1. Burning fossil fuels creates carbon dioxide, the leading greenhouse gas contributing to global warming. 2. They pose a danger to the natural ecosystems through events like oil spills and coal mining stripping lands of their vitality. The use of renewable energy sources is seen as a solution to these problems. Renewable energy is an alternate source of energy that does not deplete the way fossil fuel does, using sunlight, wind, rain, tides, and geothermal heat. Renewable energy technologies range from solar power, wind power, hydroelectricity, microhydro, biomass, and biofuels for transportation. Worldwide demand for broadband and wireless services is growing, forcing businesses and consumers to rely more and more on high-speed and mobile communication platforms. The increase in the amount of ICT equipment and network infrastructure, along with longer power-on periods, will lead to a significant increase in the carbon footprint of ICTs. So how can the uses of renewable energy benefit powering future telecommunications and broadcasting services? This was the topic of discussion at the Open Forum. Dr. Kim Malalu, Deputy Chairman at TATT, gave the opening remarks and emphasized the importance of discussing renewable energy and energy efficiency as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago.
The importance of discussing renewable energy and energy efficiency cannot be overemphasized in a heavy industry-based small island economy as is Trinidad and Tobago. The United Nations Statistics Division ranks our country 4th in the global carbon dioxide emissions per capita. In response to this, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has pledged to the UN to reduce the country's overall carbon dioxide emissions by 15% by 2030. By virtue of their emissions contributions, the transportation and heavy industries will lead the effort. This pledge is linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, established by the United Nations. SDG 7 seeks to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all.
ICTs, or information and communication technologies, have become part of our daily function, literally at our fingertips. It is an umbrella term used to encompass all rapidly emerging, evolving, and converging computer, software, networking, telecommunications, internet, programming, and information systems technologies. ICTs are accountable for 2 to 4% worldwide of carbon emission and 4 to 10% of global power consumption. This consumption emanates from telecommunication networks to growing data centers to our LCAs or life cycle assessment. This is the electricity used during manufacturing. But the largest power consumption comes from usage of our devices, our laptops, cell phones, and smart TVs, for example. TATT's economist, Mrs. Trevon Clark Ferguson, spoke further on the involvement of ICTs in climate change.
If we look at the source of the power, and we look at the dependence on coal for some of the larger players in the data center business, from Apple right down to Dell, we see that between 20 and 55% of their power comes from coal. I don't think coal is the cleanest fuel around. If we look at the countries with the largest data center in the world, the US, India, and China, they still rely heavily, that's the coal bar, they still rely heavily on coal as their power source. With telecommunication services, with especially data, projected to grow exponentially, steadily, significantly, enormously. If the source of our power is unclean, then our contribution to emissions is only going to get worse. The Internet of Things, which I'm sure everyone has heard about, which speaks towards the connecting of billions of devices, actually is projected to be 500 billion devices by the year 2030, which will result in increasing big data, increasingly smartphone penetrations, and increasing artificial intelligence. The impact of the telecommunications sector as a consumer, as a consumer of power and as an emitter is going to get significantly worse. So we are a little bit of the problem. We are part of the problem. Just looking locally, our penetration rate for mobile internet is about 52%. Our fixed internet penetration is about 60%. And the base of our fuel, it's natural gas largely, but it's also diesel. So we have room for improvement in terms of our power source, and in terms of the projected growth of our sector, it's expected to grow. So will we grow clean or will we grow dirty? If we look at the broadcasting, and this is the global broadcasting industry, that's expected to grow as well. Due to convergence, we have convergence between the entertainment, information, and telecommunications sector. That's impacting the broadcasting market positively from the consumer side. But if we look at the last bullet, which speaks to digital TV transmitters, traditionally, they have not been very efficient, right? Their power efficiency level has been between 15 to 18%. So most of the power is lost in transmission.
While technology allows many tasks to be done faster and more efficiently, they all demand some source of power to function. Trinidad and Tobago is rich with natural gas, which is exactly what is used in a variety of ways to generate electricity. Dr. Thackeray Driver, CEO of the Energy Chamber, gave insight into electricity consideration that should be taken by Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to our source of electricity.
Talking about is upgrading the single cycle gas turbines. This is where you're burning gas, when you do that to produce electricity, if you don't have a single cycle power station, about 70 to 75% of the energy content of the natural gas is just wasted and vented into the atmosphere. And about half of our electricity generation in Trinidad is still on single cycle gas turbines. TGU is more efficient, but the PowerGen and Trinity, that's what we're doing. We're putting that valuable gas resource, of which we do not have enough in the country. 70% of that, when it's burnt to make electricity, is wasted as heat into the atmosphere. Obviously, what you do with a combined cycle is you recover some of that energy from that wasted energy, and you run another turbine, so you're producing more electricity from the same amount of gas. But even then, there's still 50% of that is wasted.
However, there are other ways to make great use of most of our natural gas. Green ICTs is just one step towards renewable energy, and energy efficiencies can be attained through a variety of methods, some of which would demand us to learn more about energy efficiency and introduce new practices and systems, like corporate utility management programs, absorption, cooling, and coal generation systems, solar and biomass renewable energy systems, all of which are done locally and regionally through companies like Energy Dynamics Limited. Mr. Andre Escalante, the founder and managing director of this company, shared a bit of how we can become more energy efficient through our building structures. Telecommunications service provider Digicel has already begun their journey towards renewable energy.
This building here is in Kingston, Jamaica. Nobody here from Digicel, but this is the new Digicel headquarters for the Caribbean. So they have 3 little wind turbines here. I think they're 5 kilowatts each, 3 or 4 of them on top here. But what they have too is they have a solar cooling. So these are hot water panels here that make hot water. And we're in the absorption cooling business. And the good thing about the absorption cooling Dax mentioned is it runs on heat. It can be on natural gas, like in Trinidad. It can run on hot water, like here in Digicel. It can run on waste heat from generators. It can run on biomass, steam. Okay, so it's very versatile. And that's why we get projects throughout the Caribbean, because we're into this technology. But this one in Digicel, it runs on hot water. It's 150 tons of cooling, but it can only because they didn't put enough storage, it could only cool the building for about 4 hours a day. Then they run out, they have to go back to the electric supply, okay? It all depends on the design and how many panels they put and stuff like that, all right? The other thing too is, so I was talking to the project manager, I asked if anybody Digicel was here, but so I asked him, Digicel wanted this to be the most environmentally friendly building in the entire Caribbean. It was a showboat type of thing. But really and truly, solar cooling is not feasible because it's too expensive. And I remember talking to the project manager, he said, but Andre, the payback is over 10 years. But that was about 5 or 6 years ago, right? And he said, but we did it because we wanted to make a statement. We wanted to have the most energy efficient building around. But the technology keeps dropping and dropping as we go along, okay?
TSTT's remote offshore cellular installation on the island of Shaka Shakari provides much needed mobile voice data services to persons who traverse the waters around Trinidad's 5 islands on a daily basis. The unavailability of a commercial electricity supply on the island meant that an alternative source of power was needed for the cell site to be realized, and to this end, engineers at TSTT decided to implement a photovoltaic power system to serve as the cell site primary power source. During the daylight hours, the solar array serves a dual purpose. It powers the cellular equipment while simultaneously charging 2 banks of reserve batteries, which maintain a constant power supply to said equipment during the night. The distant location of Shaka Shakari cell site, coupled with the valuable, perhaps even critical service it provides, prompted engineers to seek an auxiliary power source to provide redundancy. The Shaka Shakari cell site is perhaps the only installation within TSTT's network where both the primary and the secondary sources of power are not derived from the electricity grid. Yet another example of the alternative renewable energy sources as viable alternatives to fossil fuels. But what efforts are being made by the Trinidad and Tobago government regarding energy conservation? Ms. Anita Hankey, Senior Planning Officer at the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, provided an overview.
Well, we have been working with the EU, the Energy Chamber, the Ministry of Planning, in particular the Economic Development Advisory Board, with regard to this conference. We have been working with the EU. In fact, the EU is assisting us through what is known as a technical assistance facility to develop a roadmap to achieve the 2 major targets. That is the 10% renewable energy target, the national target that was set by the Minister of Finance in the 2015-16 budget. So we have that national target of 10% by 2021, and also the 15% 15% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. Product and technical standards. We are currently part of the technical working group to assist and advise the TTBS in the development of what is known as the Regional Energy Efficiency Building Code. This also forms part of CARICOM Quoted Energy Ministers meeting as well. The aim is to help Trinidad and Tobago achieve energy efficiency in the design and construction phase, thus reducing energy consumption.
As citizens, however, we have to also do our part in energy efficiency. An overall cultural change would help towards a drastic improvement. We are, after all, the main consumers. There are incentives that help make the transition easier.
Government incentives, well, I spoke to the Finance Act earlier on. Another major incentive is the removal of the existing 20% custom duty payable on CFLs. This is the second phase of that program, and the whole issue, well, we know that we have to keep monitoring. Monitoring was done for the first phase, and the intention is to continue monitoring to see to what extent people are really switching to CFLs from their normal incandescent bulbs. Again, the government has exempted from import duties and VAT with conditions, of course, for items with respect to solar water heaters, solar PVs, wind turbines.
Uptake of renewable energy in the provision of telecommunications and broadcasting services will be influenced by a number of factors.
The price of power from traditional source in Trinidad and Tobago is very cheap. It's very, very cheap compared to compared to the cost of implementing renewable energy. At least it was. We may hear today that it might be getting closer. Competition, legislation in power distribution and private market opportunities is another factor. Currently, TATT is the sole power distributor in Trinidad and Tobago. If we were to include renewable energy generation, we would need some amendments to the legislation for that to be done. Opportunities for feed-in tariffs. We know that committees are currently working on this within the ministry and the RIC and other organizations. Education and awareness. All sectors have a role to play in spreading the importance of climate change. We all have to look at ourselves. Optimal energy mix, identification. I think work is happening there, and we may hear more of that today. But another key factor is culture. We're just resistant to change. We're not a society that takes a lot of risk unless we're forced to do so.
In the various presentations, I got the impression that you have various groups working on frameworks and standards for renewables and energy efficiency. How are you all ensuring that the various industry consumers of energy, not the energy producers, that you're capturing their peculiar needs, and especially from the standpoint of their particular incentives that will help them decide, what we're going to take the plunge and make our organization more energy efficient. For example, like data centers, for example, which is a big energy hog. They're growing in the community now.
Within the presentation, there was a reference to the International Telecommunications Union and a list of methodologies that would have been developed. One treats specifically with data centers. It goes into detail, speaking with even the tendering process and the efficiency of the technology that needs to be addressed. So we have, as an authority, there hasn't been established a framework on renewable energy. As I said, this discussion here today begins the talk for telecommunications, and we are taking note of all the comments that apply to us, and we will see where amendments can be made. But in the interim, we, as a signatory to the ITU, we are not opposed where persons of their own volition seek to adopt more energy-efficient approaches to providing telecom services.
Around the world, conversations on renewable energy are growing. Transitions into greener ICTs are happening. The more we learn and understand the cause and effect of energy consumption, the sooner we can, together, save millions of dollars annually, but most importantly, save the very world we live in.